Okay, this is the last video for the week. Um, this is English 101, Week 4, Part 10. I'm just going to keep reading. I'm at the last paragraph on the bottom of page 10. For the first 14 days, Gregor's parents could not bring themselves to come into the room to see him. He would often hear them say how they appreciated all the new work his sister was doing, even though before they had seen her as a girl who was somewhat useless and frequently been annoyed with her. But now the two of them, father and mother, would often both wait outside the door of Gregor's room while his sister tidied up in there, and as soon as she went out again, she would have to tell them exactly how everything looked, what Gregor had eaten, how he had behaved this time, whether perhaps any slight improvement could be seen. His mother also wanted to go in and visit Gregor relatively soon, but his father and sister at first persuaded her against it. Gregor listened very closely to all this and approved fully. Later, though, she had to be held back by force, which made her call out, Let me go and see Gregor. He is my unfortunate son. Can't you understand? I have to see him." And Gregor would think to himself that maybe it would be better if his mother came in, not every day, of course, but one day a week, perhaps. And she could understand everything much better than his sister, who, for all her courage, was still just a child after all, and might really not have had an adult's appreciation of the burdensome job she had taken on. And Gregor's wish to see his mother was soon realized. Out of consideration for his parents, Gregor wanted to avoid being seen at the window during the day. A few square meters on the floor did not give him much room to crawl about. It was hard to just lie quietly through the night. His food soon stopped giving him any pleasure at all, and so, to entertain himself, he got into the habit of crawling up and down the walls and ceiling. He was especially fond of hanging from the ceiling. It was quite different from lying on the floor. Well, he could breathe more freely, and his body had a light swing to it, and up there, relaxed and almost happy, it might happen that he would surprise even himself by letting go of the ceiling and landing on the floor with a crash. But now, of course, he had far better control of his body than before, and even with a fall as great as that, caused himself no damage. Very soon his sister noticed Gregor's new way of entertaining himself. He had, after all, left traces of his adhesive from his feet as he crawled about, and she got it into her head to make it as easy as possible for him by removing the furniture that got in his way, especially the chest of drawers and the desk. Now, this was not something she would be able to do by herself. She did not dare ask for help from her father. The 16-year-old maid had carried on bravely since the cook left, but she certainly would not have helped in this. She'd even asked to be allowed to keep the kitchen locked at all times and never to have to open the door unless it was especially important. So his sister had no choice but to choose some time when Gregor's father was not there and fetch his mother to help her. As she approached the room, Gregor could hear his mother express her joy, but once at the door she went silent. First, of course, his sister came and looked around to see that everything in the room was all right. And only then did she let her mother enter. Gregor had hurriedly pulled the sheet down lower over the couch and put more folds into it so that everything really looked as if it had just been thrown by chance. Gregor also refrained, this time, from spying out from under the sheet. He had given up the chance to see his mother until later and was simply glad that she had come. "You can come in. He can't be seen," said his sister, obviously leading her in by the hand. The old chest of drawers was too heavy for a pair of feeble women to be heaving about, but Gregor listened as they pushed it from its place, his sister always taking on the heaviest part of the work for herself and ignoring her mother's warnings that she would strain herself. This lasted a very long time. After laboring at it for 15 minutes or more, his mother said it would be better to leave the chest where it was. For one thing, it was too heavy for them to get the job finished before Gregor's father got home, and leaving it in the middle of the room would be in his way even more. And for another thing, it wasn't even sure that taking the furniture away would really be any help to him. She thought just the opposite. The sight of the bare walls saddened her right to her heart. And why wouldn't Gregor feel the same about it? He'd been used to this furniture in his room for a long time, and it would make him feel abandoned to be in an empty room like that. Then, quietly, almost whispering as if wanting to Gregor, whose whereabouts she did not know, to hear not even the tone of her voice, she was convinced that he did not understand her words. She added, "And by taking the furniture away, won't it seem like we're showing that we've given up all hope of improvement and that we're abandoning him to cope for himself? I think it'd be best to leave the room exactly the way it was before, so that when Gregor comes back to us, he'll again find everything unchanged, and he'll be able to forget the time in between all the easier." Hearing these words from his mother made Gregor realize that the lack of any direct human communication, along with the monotonous life led by the family during these 2 months, must have made him confused. He could think of no other way of explaining to himself why he had seriously wanted the room emptied out. But he really wanted to transform his room into a cave, a warm room fitted out with nice furniture he'd inherited that would have let him crawl around unimpeded in any direction, but would also have let him quickly forget his past when he had been human. He had come very close to forgetting, and it had only been the voice of his mother, unheard for so long, that had shaken him out of it. Nothing should be removed. Everything had to stay. He could not do without the good influence the furniture had on his condition. And if the furniture made it difficult for him to crawl about mindlessly, well, that was not a loss, but a great advantage. His sister, unfortunately, did not agree. She had come to the idea, not without reason, that she was Gregor's spokesman to his parents about the things that concerned him. This meant that his mother's advice was now sufficient reason for her to insist on removing not only the chest of drawers and the desk, as she had thought at first, but all the furniture apart from the all-important couch. It was more than childish perversity, of course, or the unexpected confidence she had recently acquired that made her insist. She had noticed that Gregor needed a lot of room to crawl in, whereas the furniture, as far as anyone could see, was no use to him at all. Girls of that age, though, do become enthusiastic about things and feel they must get their way whenever they can. Perhaps this was what tempted Greta to make Gregor's situation seem even more shocking than it was, so that she could do even more for him. Greta would probably be the only one who would dare enter a room dominated by Gregor crawling about the bare walls by himself. So she refused to let her mother dissuade her. Gregor's mother already looked uneasy in his room, and soon she stopped speaking and helped Gregor's sister get the chest of drawers out with what strength she had. The chest of drawers was something that Gregor could do without if he had to, but the writing desk had to stay. Hardly had the two women pushed the chest of drawers, groaning, out of the room, then Gregor poked his head out from under the couch to see what he could do about it. He meant to be careful and considerate as he could, but unfortunately, it was his mother who came back first while Greta in the next room had her arms around the chest, pushing and pulling it from side to side by herself, without, of course, moving it an inch. His mother was not used to the sight of Gregor. He might have made her ill, so Gregor hurried backwards to the far end of the couch. In his startlement, though, he was not able to prevent the sheet at its front from moving a little. It was enough to attract his mother's attention. She stood very still, remained there a moment, and then went back out to Greta. Gregor kept trying to assure himself he had nothing unusual was happening, just a few pieces of furniture being moved after all, but he soon had to admit that the women going to and fro, and their little calls to each other, the scraping of the furniture on the floor, all these things made him feel as if he were being assailed from all sides. With his head and legs pulled in against him and his body pressed to the floor, he was forced to admit to himself that he could not stand all of this much longer. They were emptying his room out, taking away everything that was dear to him. They had already taken out the chest containing his fret saw and other tools, and now they threatened to remove the writing desk with its place clearly worn into the floor, the desk where he had done his homework as a business trainee. At high school, even while he'd been at infant school, he really could not wait any longer to see the two women's intentions were good. He had nearly forgotten they were there anyway, as they were now too tired to say anything while they worked, and he could only hear their feet as they stepped heavily on the floor. So, while the women were leant against the desk in the other room catching their breath, he sallied out, and he came out, changed direction 4 times, not knowing what he should say first, before his attention was suddenly caught by the picture on the wall, which was already denuded of everything else that had been on it, of the lady dressed in copious fur. Copious is like a lot. He hurried up to the picture and pressed himself against its glass. It held him firmly and felt good on his hot belly. This picture, at least, now totally covered by Gregor, would certainly be taken away by no one. He turned his head to face the door into the living room so that he could watch the women when they came back. They had not allowed themselves... I'll stop there. I think that's probably enough. Okay, I'm going to put a little marker there so I remember where I left off. Okay, and that's it. So, obviously you can keep reading that on your own. I'll read it some more next week. But yeah, okay, cool. And I will see you guys next week. Thanks for joining me for Kafka Theater. All right. You guys are doing okay, right? I don't let me know. I hope this is all... I don't like online teaching. I hate it. I want to get back in the classroom. I'm just really sick of this whole goddamn thing. Anyway, I hope you guys are doing okay. This is hard and it's ridiculous, and I like depressing stories, and that's probably not what you need in your life right now, but I try to make it fun. I try to be fun. I don't know. Anyway, I'll see you online. I love all of you. I don't even know who you are, and I love you because you're my students. Okay. Bye.